It's often tough to talk objectively about art when the whole medium of art is subjective. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, but that doesn't mean there's not a point of common ground where we can all agree to some extent. The question is, can we talk objectively about subjective things? I think it's possible to be objective about the quality of a show, while still inviting different opinions and levels of enjoyment. I think there can absolutely be a difference between the best show you've ever seen and your favourite show you've ever seen. We're all grown-ups, we can discuss the quality of things without getting upset. This is where the grading system of TV comes in. A system that is common when discussing the level of movies, but I think should be utilised more with TV shows. Specifically, distinguishing between A and B grade, as these are the two main categories. B grade shows have a special place in my heart. They may lack in quality in some areas like writing and acting, but can be a really fun watch. This video will talk about what gives a show an A or B rating, and why this doesn't necessarily mean one show is better than the other. Whilst C and D grade definitely do exist, not naming any names, I'll try to steer clear of adding more grades to this discussion, as I don't want to convolute the system and turn it into a complete tier list. I'm sure if you look hard enough, you can find a few of those on YouTube. Also a disclaimer, this is all my opinion, but I hope it's somewhat of a representation of the quality and grades of television. A lot of the time, grading can be done with minimal effort. Off the top of my head, I could think of a show and tell you what grade it's under. This is easier with A-grade shows. There shouldn't be any controversy when stating Breaking Bad, Ozark, and The Sopranos are all A-grade shows. But why is that? There are a couple of characteristics that come to mind. An obvious one, the budget of a show, is usually a good indication of a show's grade. Whether you're a fan of Game of Thrones or not, it's clear that the budget is a huge factor in the success of the show, allowing it to produce the big moments the show hypes up for years. The sheer volume of some of these scenes is completely unmatched. A good way to think about it is, do you really think if Game of Thrones had the budget of Outer Banks, would it be as impressive? Obviously not. Outer Banks is one of the best shows. Obviously not. I'm not saying Game of Thrones is only A grade due to its budget. Friends had a huge budget for its 10 seasons, albeit for its cast, but still. And I wouldn't put Friends in A grade. Although comedies, along with animated shows, find it a bit harder to be considered A grade. But that's something I'll get into a bit later. It's not always the case with budget, however. Peaky Blinders is pretty A grade, but has quite a small budget in comparison to other shows. Regardless, budget is generally a good indication of a show's grade. The second clear characteristic is acting and cast. This often ties in with budget, as the more money you can offer, the better actors you can cast. Great acting can often carry a series with average writing or premise. Not at all saying that these were poor in season 1 of True Detective. I actually thought the writing and premise were great. But would I have enjoyed it as much if it didn't boast incredible performances from Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson? I can't say, but it's clear A-grade actors can help make for an A-grade show. Breaking Bad has some of the best acting performances, movie or TV, of all time. Again, even with the phenomenal writing, I don't know if it'd be anywhere close to as good with average acting. Now, these two characteristics aren't the only factors in what makes a show A-grade. And these characteristics don't automatically make a show enjoyable. There are a lot of pieces that have to fit together, like writing, cinematography, an interesting premise, and so on. This is where the point of this video becomes apparent. Art is subjective, and just because something is made to be high quality, doesn't mean you have to enjoy it as much. I fully accept Ozark is an A-grade show, but it just wasn't for me. The pacing felt kind of slow, and I wasn't too big a fan of the color grading. And so I like shows that are objectively worse more. A-grade shows can also drop the ball a bit in terms of their quality. They often have a high level of popularity, so are under more scrutiny than other shows, and have to keep things fresh and exciting. But this can negatively affect the writing process due to the pressure. Game of Thrones, as discussed, is pretty comfortably A-grade, but has massive writing and character issues as the show progresses, particularly in the final few seasons. Maybe controversial, but I'd say Euphoria is A-grade, as its acting and cinematography is pretty outstanding in the first season. An area where teen dramas often lack. But then again, I didn't enjoy the writing in the second season, and saw a sizable dip in quality. The lesson here is, being objective about a show is possible, and that doesn't mean you have to enjoy it more than other shows. So this brings us to B-grade television. Shows that most of the time, you can say are objectively not as good as others, but not necessarily not as enjoyable. In fact, a good chunk of my favourite shows of all time probably fall in the B-grade category. So what makes a show B-grade? A common characteristic of B-grade TV is it's easy to watch. This can come in different forms, but Generally, a faster paced story and shorter episodes are the mainstays of this category. Another common theme is average to subpar acting and inconsistent or convoluted writing. These both are usually due to lower budgets and thus not as accomplished actors or writers being involved with the show. This could be low-hanging fruit, as I'd argue it should be C or D grade, but Riverdale is a good example. The acting and writing is so bad, but the show still has a high level of popularity, and the earlier seasons at least are pretty easy to watch. This isn't to say there aren't good performances and seasons constructed with excellent writing in B-grade shows. One of the biggest surprises, for me at least, was the release of the 2019 comedy drama Sex Education. At first it screamed B-grade due to the fairly unknown cast and premise of the show, but proved to be extremely quality with some of the performances, as well as some really well-written characters and storylines. The last characteristic, and what I think produces the beauty of B-grade TV, is how the allure of the show is created and then retained. The three main allures are usually the cast and character attachments, the excitement of the story and twists, and the premise itself. Now, no show will ever survive without developing characters the audience can root for, chooses their favourite, and enjoy watching. I mean, I don't know how 13 Reasons Why made it through 4 seasons without doing this, but whatever. The funny thing is, the characters don't even have to be that well written. Normally all it takes for us humans to enjoy something is have a group of attractive and somewhat likable people involved. This trope is used to be able to have the characters do literally anything and have the audience interested in them and what's happening. Gossip Girl nailed this. Some of the plot lines are just ridiculous, but I need to know if Chuck and Blair get together. The benefit of having a faster paced story is you're able to really throw in whatever twists you want at any point. The writing is often not as thoughtful as in A grade, and the direction of storylines can become convoluted, but that makes for an exciting story where anything could happen. I found big twists out of nowhere and ridiculous plot lines, as stupid as some might be, are pretty exciting and adds to the whole what's going to happen next element really well. The funny thing is, B-grade shows often actually have the most incredible premises. So many have such great ideas for a television show, and while they don't necessarily stick the landing, it's still great to watch just for the premise. The 100 is a fantastic idea, throwing a group of teens into a post-apocalyptic world and having them survive together. It's just brilliant. Even if I don't care for some storylines, I want to know what happens. Again, it has a cast of attractive people doing things in a cool setting. This is how it's allowed to sacrifice writing and acting while still being enjoyable. Now, there are limitations of this kind of grading system. Of course, even when trying to look objectively at something, not everyone will agree. Generally, we can look with a decent level of certainty. But then we have comedies and animated shows. Obviously, comedy is subjective. If the primary goal of a show is to be funny and you don't find it to be, it's hard to look at it and say objectively it's A grade, even if it contains the characteristics I set out earlier like budget and cast. I loved American Vandal, and I think it's one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. Does that mean it's A grade because its goal was to be funny, and in my opinion, it was? Probably not, but it still raises a good question. The idea of A and B grading definitely lacks accuracy with these kind of shows. The same can be said for animated shows. A whole new element is added in the quality of animation, and acting is substituted for voice acting, which is still equally as important. The first show I think of when I think animated A grade is Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think it's the best animated show of all time. It's probably my favorite show of all time. I think BoJack Horseman is another great shout. It's got great humor and some of the most phenomenally written characters. But then what about something like Family Guy? Its longevity is impressive, and although I'm not the biggest fan of it, I know a lot of people are. It's tough to grade when the quality of animated shows in terms of budget and acting don't vary anywhere near as much as live action, meaning the standard is pretty similar and it's more just what you're into. As I said, comedies and animations do limit the accuracy of the grading system, but I guess if we can keep in mind being objective about TV is the key, we can continue to use it, albeit with a pinch of salt. This concept of A and B grading isn't perfect, nor is it a definitive way to tell if a show is good or not, but that's kind of the point. It's possible for us to be objective about subjective things. How well a show is made doesn't dictate how much you like it and enjoy watching it. This is evident with B-grade shows, and why I love this category where often the show doesn't take itself seriously, it just tries to provide entertainment. B-grade TV continues to excite me with lovable characters, fast-paced and easy-to-watch episodes, unpredictable and sometimes downright ridiculous twists, and some of the more interesting premises we've seen. I think we should all watch both grades and enjoy both grades. But next time, if a show seems lower in budget, acting capabilities, writing, everything else, maybe don't dismiss it. Maybe give it a go.